Hi, Doc.
So last one we got tonight says, "Hi, I am 34 years old and have been on TRT for about 10 years now. On about 350 milligrams of test sip per week. Take 2.5 milligrams of letrozole a day. Holy moly. I have noticed about 3 years ago I started to experience ED. Yeah, I'll bet. We're going to help this person, I can tell already. I have tried natural subs and other remedies, but nothing worked. I take 10 milligrams of Cialis and that works, but what to fix the root cause? My blood pressure is 140/86 and estradiol is 43 at last bloods. Is there something I'm not doing right? And what exactly causes ED? Read a lot and it seems there is no clear answer. Thank you, sir." Okay, this, just doesn't make any sense. I can't imagine a doctor prescribing 2.5 milligrams of letrozole per day, so I have to assume that this is, black market obtained, or certainly not obtained through a doctor, but my implication being that this is not pharmaceutical grade letrozole, because that would just absolutely bury your estrogen, period. Letrozole is typically reserved for really recalcitrant cases of aromatization, and it's very, very rare. I mean, I can't think of but a few times I've ever had to call on it, and it's been for a short term because it really works strongly. Letrozole was invented before anastrozole was, what we now know as letrozole goes by Femara, and anastrozole goes by Arimidex. So Arimidex was actually second because we found liver enzyme elevations using letrozole, and they were mild, but still, hey, it's enough to make it an issue, and rightfully so. So we came up with anastrozole and didn't see the same problems. But letrozole is so strong that in and of itself, burying your estrogen, and we touched on this earlier, minimizing it, or I should say over-suppressing it a little bit, can cause issues. It's rare. But with letrozole, because you're burying it, it happens a lot. And it might be because of letrozole itself. I haven't been able to tease that out, but whenever I've used letrozole, or more often heard about people using letrozole, in other words, we talk about what's going on, what they're using on their own, and they go, "Oh, and I'm using letrozole," and I go, "Oh, that's the problem." We get them off of letrozole, ED resolves. So I don't understand why, despite taking 2.5 milligrams of letrozole per day, and I would say you're going to be using that dose once a week and still hammering your estrogen pretty good. Twice a week, you've got to be just destroying it, but once a week, you're probably still destroying it. So every day makes me wonder, is this real letrozole? How can you still have an estradiol of 43? And by the way, I've said this before, estradiol is not going to be valuable for guys because it's not precise enough to be accurate, if that makes sense. So for guys, because you're trying to get something precise to measure those much smaller levels, lower levels, I should say, of estradiol, we need an estradiol sensitive. But even still, I mean, it should register 0 no matter how you're, how imprecisely you're measuring it or close to it. Yeah. 43 just doesn't make sense. So
it's over the counter and fake. I mean, it's on the
I don't know, but we gotta look into it. Well, but then so then you go, okay, well, which is it then, Rand? You just said using letrozole is gonna bury your estrogen, and that's what causes it, or maybe it's the letrozole itself. Well, if it's fake letrozole, then why does he have ED then? So I don't know the answer, but it doesn't add up. But for the benefit of everybody else, if you've got ED and you're using letrozole, stop using letrozole for sure.
Simple.
And if you're burying your estrogen, ditto. Ease up on the aromatase inhibitor and see if the ED doesn't resolve in a week or two. There's a lot to this, and again, I can't practice medicine here, but I would say he said to be on TRT since he's 24, right? Because he's 34 now. So
that's not really TRT.
Well, and on a hefty dose, obviously, of testosterone cypionate compared to the norm. But one other thing you might try is adding some HCG to the regimen, because what we found is, again, this is rare because usually you get people on testosterone replacement therapy who have hypogonadism, and they go, thank you Jesus, thank you Lord, you saved my life, I got my libido back, everything comes back, and they're happy. It's very rare that they get all the benefits except for the increased libido or the return of libido.
Right.
Every once in a while, though, you add a little bit of HCG to those people. Again, that's a rare person that it happens to, and they go, that was it, you cured me. Can't imagine what the mechanism of action is, because, it's the estrogen. No, we're regulating the estrogen. I have very few people that are on testosterone replacement therapy, males, that don't use some sort of estrogen control, we'll call it, whether it's through a blocker or more a SERM, or usually through an aromatase inhibitor. So is it the fact that they just need a little bit of endogenous production that makes a difference? I don't know what the answer is, but I know it often is what solves the problem.
Yeah.
So you might want to try adding that. The fact that the Cialis works is interesting too, isn't it? Because that's a PDE5 inhibitor, although it works on other PDEs, whatever it is, 8, 9, 3, whatever. But it's mainly a PDE5 inhibitor, and it's working on nitric oxide reabsorption, right? So if that solves the problem, we go back to, okay, well, what's the issue? Is it maybe just that you're not getting enough of the precursors, for example? ED is a tricky one. So is it you're not getting enough arginine, L-citrulline, and enough, meaning, if you're going to supplement with it, try 2 to 4 grams at a minimum of either one of those, and see if that doesn't help. But are you doing your cardio? Because we have, 34, you're way too young to worry about nitric oxide synthase cells, not doing their job in the endothelial walls. But what stimulates them to do their work is moving the walls around with, exercise, particularly cardiovascular activity, right? 34, we've seen bodybuilders don't do a lot of cardio, right?
Yeah.
Still, you would think that wouldn't be the issue. But again, that's something I'd throw in the program. I think the main problem is the letrozole, even though the estradiol levels don't make sense. Now, the other thing you mentioned is 140 over 86. If that's truly your blood pressure, then that's too high, meaning that's your blood pressure all the time. Now, this is another tricky one, though. With blood pressure, Dr. Eric Topol came up with a great idea a long time ago. This is a guy who works south of us here down in San Diego, and he's got a foot in clinical and a foot in academia. Perfect, right? And he said, we're doing measurements of blood pressure in the office. At least half the people who come into the office have what we call white coat syndrome. Hey, man, who likes to go to doctor's offices, It usually implies there's something wrong, right? Why do you go to a doctor? Hey, just want to say hi today, Red. No, I got a complaint here. Or, it's a pain in the rear because they don't want to, but we're dealing with controlled substance, so we got to see at least, what's here. So, no, there's no really fun reason. And so the blood pressure goes up for those reasons. Well, let's measure it at home. Smart, right? So I think a lot of people are catching on with Dr. Topol's idea, by the way, because it's going to be artificially inflated. At the doctor's office, if you find that you're, say, 120 over 70 at home, you're done.
Yeah.
I joke with guys, if you're going to the gym and you take your blood pressure and it ain't 180 over 130, turn around and go home, man. You ain't ready yet. You're not fired up. The brain can fire up your blood pressure, in other words.
Yeah.
And, if you're a morning lark and you get up and, cortisol levels are high, if it's not 140 over 80, it might be unusual for you, because you're going. But then by nighttime, it drops down to 120 over 70. You're okay. It doesn't mean you have hypertension. You don't have a pathology, right? You're just wound up.
Yeah.
So you get my point. And this is not just me. You might argue, as I did, I think once in front of my cardiologist, I said, well, but then if it's not a pathology by the standard definition, it's still a pathology by new standards of, just being stressed all the time. Well, no, don't forget, you still go to sleep. So it may be high all day long because of stress and the way you deal with stress, but then you go to sleep and it comes back down to 120 over 70. That's enough of a break. Yeah. Just like, Well, yeah, then working out would be terrible for you because it's 180 over 130 while you're doing deep squats, right?
But it's 2
but then you
hours and an hour and a
stop.
half, yeah.
And so you don't it's kind of like the concept of training versus overtraining.
Yeah.
There's enough rest where you're not, putting too much pressure on the arterial walls and then the kidneys.
You
and
don't pedal
whatnot.
to the metal all the time, yeah.
So, but that's something that if it is truly high blood pressure, we want to get that down too. And that, blood pressure issues can affect ED for sure, even though that'd be very mild hypertension, stage 1. Also something just more on the subject of ED, thickening of the blood. So there's no reference here to the H&H, the hemoglobin, hematocrit, red blood cell count's always nice to have with that. And sleep apnea, which is a typical cause that I see in practice of that H&H elevation, because that blood thickness, we loosely term it, can effectuate ED too. I've seen it.
There you go. Cool. Thanks, Doc.
Sure.